Yes, okay. Um, we are gathered together to try to get some handle on this May 30th event. Catherine and I did have a conversation with Deborah and Kirk, and they had discussed, and Judy Kerman. I'm a little gray on.
Oh, we went to
Oh, we went to their meeting.
yeah, we went to
Right.
the,
Yeah, we went to their meeting.
yeah,
So they all had some input.
right.
And they were, Judy particularly, but they were really concerned that 3 hours would put people off, that nobody would, the people would not want to come, that alone was enough to put people off.
Because it was too long?
Too long, yeah.
Yeah.
So we said we would try to work within the 2 hour framework. Then if we go over a little bit, we go over, but at least we've entrapped people into coming to a 2 hour experience, and see what we can do. So let's talk a little bit about what we'd like to get out of this meeting. So we know what our goal is here, and then that will help us refine how we can get there.
Well, I guess for one, we need to, I don't know if the word respond is correct, but we need to make sure that whoever wrote this letter, those people who are on that other zoning thing, that, I mean, I'm sure they're going to be there and they're going to challenge us. So we need to have answers for that, for those
Right.
questions that they had.
Yeah. And these could be general concerns as well. Like it may not just be the people who wrote the letter. We do want to say, we
You
talked.
know who they are, right? I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys know.
Just to say, this is a meeting that's being recorded
So we don't want
and
to.
they could discover this conversation. So
No, they're going to. So what I'm saying is that if you read it, the three people that wrote this letter, and it says right under there, members of the Woodstock zoning revisions, they're not hiding it. They
Right.
are who they
Right.
are. And we had spoke to them as the housing committee, Deborah, myself, Bob Young, we all spoke with and had conversations with at least one or two of these folks in a meeting, and the last meeting that we had before we all decided with the planning board director of Ulster County, Dennis Doyle, and his senior representative over there, who is also Leibovitz, who is also legal. This was in 2021 when we were first meeting, sort of, and working with the zoning revisions committee. And at that time, we realized that this was way too complicated for people in the community who are volunteers and are not schooled professionals in the planning and right zoning for a living, that this was going to be way over all of our heads. And that was also, Mike was in that, who's from the zoning board of appeals. So
that's
out of that last.
Wait, I don't want to go into deep detail about this because we're not
Let me
going to
just
respond
finish,
to the letter.
Susan, please let me finish. I'm
I'll give you a
talking about the
minute.
letter.
I'll give you a minute.
Then I'm going to leave, because if you can't let me have a few minutes to
have
have
a
a really important,
But we have a
to give
purpose
important
here.
background, Susan, and let me speak. You guys can all speak as much as you want. Just let me speak. Okay.
You got a minute.
So then what happened was we all decided as a committee that we needed to hire somebody and to get serious about it. Shortly after, that was when we had gone for the Greenway grant, and then went for Nan Stolzenberg, who is a professional. These folks weren't a part of that. They wanted to write the zoning code. They weren't part of writing the zoning code. This is a response to that, in my opinion, but it is the history of what happened.
Okay. So there's going to be other people with the same concerns about, are we going to get affordability out of this? Are we going to have just blow up,
Of course, but they're
development?
attacking us.
So we need to build that into the presentation I think, that we make on the 30th. The pluses in the new code that both protect and encourage or reward the things that we want.
Mhm.
So that's, as Howard said, there's, we need to address these issues, but we're not going to address, we can write a letter, we can do other things that we're not going to talk about today, but we can't, but.
Okay, how about you let us know what we can talk about today, so then we
We
can talk
have,
about.
excuse
When
me,
you, when you
excuse
open it
me.
up, that, what do you guys want to talk about? And we
No,
start
I
talking
did
about it,
not
and then you
say
stop
that.
us.
Look,
No, you
we
are. I
have a
mean,
meeting, we have an
tell me what you want to
agenda.
talk about today
Yeah, okay.
specifically.
We have an agenda, and this agenda is to talk about the event. It is not to talk about responding to the letter.
Although
the
that's
point.
what the email said.
No,
to
it's
read
not.
this before, with, yes, Catherine, read
I
this
said-
before so we could talk about it in the meeting.
No,
Now we're not.
no.
Well, no, it was not to discuss a response. It was more to discuss how we're going to frame our outreach. Because we know these are the kind of things that some people are
Right.
thinking.
Exactly.
And it's in HV1, so. we
Yeah,
thought it
it's
would be
out
good.
there in the public. And we may have a response, which would be perfectly appropriate, but right.
Oh, so this is in the Hudson
This
Valley
meeting.
one? This was in the newspaper?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, it was in Hudson Valley one.
Yep.
So the purpose of this meeting is to talk about the event on the 30th. So
wow.
Perhaps
we'll
one way,
address what we think are the major issues.
well, I think, it seems to me that a way to handle this might be to, one, to establish the goals that we want without regard to these other implications. Just state the goals that, they're altruistic. And so we want affordable housing, et cetera, all the goals that we want. And then from that, we can get into the, what's that new word they're using today? Granular
Yes.
elements of how do we get there without, without this other stuff. But I think stating the goals that we want, which I think most people I think would probably agree with.
Mhm.
And then after those goals are established and we, get people on board, then we can talk about how we get there without it getting screwed up by, these other developers. And maybe there is a way to do that. Not sure what it is right now, but I think we could figure that out. Does that sound like a way to state it?
Yeah, well, I think we can use some of the slides from the presentation last night.
Mhm.
And a lot of those covered, I thought the beginning slides were especially good,
Mhm.
objectives, and Deborah's going to send us that PowerPoint.
We need to figure out, I think, how to do this, the presentation part in like 15, 20 minutes at the most.
Mhm.
And Laura, you're muted. There you go.
So if we haven't got 3 hours, I mean, and I mean, like what, and we're going, as Susan just said, if we're going to do 15 minutes of the presentation, then what's the rest of the time going to be filled with? Because I think it probably sounds like it's a good idea if we really time it out. I mean, like.
Did you see the outline that I sent yesterday? It was attached to the email.
Probably screen share it.
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah, I did see it.
Yeah, because we sketched out some time, but we wanted to get everybody's feedback on the plan for this. So we were going to start with the presentation, which would be a lot shorter than last night.
Yeah.
And not get into so many.
I meant to go last night, but I just had stuff on and I just could not.
Yeah,
so
that's all right.
I'm really
So
sorry
it was
about
like an
that.
hour and a half.
You should watch the video because
Yeah.
it was really good. It's
was
very
good.
informative.
Yeah, I'm
And I
going.
I took a lot of notes on each slide and areas where I think we could turn it into a turn and talk, and
Right.
areas that could be better visually better, and then workshopped.
So we were thinking,
So are you showing this
I
outline?
I don't know how to just share it, I'm afraid. I have it, but I don't
oh
know.
wait, I didn't allow you to do it. That's
Oh,
why.
well, I'm not sure.
Sorry. Okay, now you're allowed.
Okay, so now let me screen share screen and, okay. All right. Is it
Yep.
there?
Yep.
Okay. Um, so I think Catherine had an idea to follow the slide presentation. And Urena, if you have,
Zoom it up a little bit, like 125%, because I can't see it very well.
oh,
Please, and thank you.
better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Let me put it, okay. Urena, if you took notes and you can, maybe think about which ones would make a, good set essential presentation that would support what we're trying to get here, which is to get people excited about creating affordable housing, as well as to understand what the benefits of the new code are, what the important benefits are. That would be really a good start.
Do you want me to start with, those notes? So slide 1,
No,
No,
I
no,
don't
we're not
mean to
gonna
do
it
that.
now.
We're
Yeah.
just working on the outline at this point, but it would be great if you could work on, since you took a lot of notes on the slides, which ones you would think would make a great 15-minute presentation,
well,
what points it would cover.
how about we go through this, because I look at this completely different. I think I look at it like there was a ton of people that were not there last night. And last night, a lot of what the majority of the chunk of what they had, I really don't see a lot to trim down. Everything they were said was very important. I would only take 2 of those sections, slide 6 and slide 8, and that would be a talk and turn where there's an example, and this would help with comprehension. And the one was about the subdivision, and the other one was about I think it was ADUs and the deeding. And so that's where there was a lot of concern and questions and trying to understand what that means in real world.
Mhm.
And so that's where I would break into. It also is timing wise, breaks it up. But when you guys are saying, let's try to take that 2 hour or hour and a half and try to compact it into 15 minutes. The only thing I don't see that being beneficial. And then what are we going to do with the next hour and 45 minutes?
Well, that's if our goal is to get people excited about the affordable housing we can build, hopefully, if to build a constituency, that's a little different goal than the Housing Oversight Task Force's goal, which is to teach everybody about the details of the changes the revisions they're proposing, they've proposed to the town. They're 2 different kinds of goals. And they've done that in the town. We could, encourage people to look at the town board meeting. It was incredibly informative and very detailed. We're not going to do that again. That doesn't make any sense to do it again. But where we would go is Catherine had an idea to follow the slide presentation, the sort of meat and bones, with a panel discussion with the Housing Oversight Task Force, maybe 4 of them, about the things that they would want to highlight. Give them a couple of questions, and then they can, give their personal, I really think this is a really impactful part because, and, I hope people understand this section because, whatever it is we work out, but a panel where there's then more talking about what the law can do for the town without it being this stand up in front and present, which although, you know, the slides were great and it was all really important, I personally thought it was way too long.
Mhm.
And
I also
I don't
spoke
think,
with Deborah yesterday. Sorry, Susan. I just want to say Deborah really liked the panel idea.
oh, okay.
And she also said, what if we invited Kai Lord Farmer to sit
Mhm.
on the panel? And then
Mhm.
in the next section, when we get, questions from people on
Right.
comments, he could also chime in and be an expert.
So then
So
in
I
the
have a
next
question.
section,
Are you guys looking at, because we're also talking about the method of how we're
mhm,
communicating
mhm,
and with the community.
mhm.
It's sort of, what is your method of practice here, I guess? Are you expecting that people are just going to sit and listen? Are you expecting that the only time that they talk is for questions?
Well, no, you see here, the next section, if people have questions already that they want to pose to the panel, or, you know, that we will have collected those, we could present some of those in another 20-minute section. And then break up into tables where people can talk with somebody at each table who's knowledgeable, and raise some, you know, what are you concerned about? What questions do you have? You know, are you excited about being able to get some affordable housing in town? What ideas do you have?
I think the idea of having the tables is a good idea, and the questions as well. So you've got different things, but I'm just wondering, because rather than do the presentation, then give people a way to note down their questions, and then but give them the expectation and the time to discuss those questions in the group, because there's going to be someone there with knowledge, and then feedback, because then I think then the questions and things that are left over from those table discussions could end up being, I think, more positive when they come back into the arena to, share them. What are your takeaways? Are there any outstanding questions? Because I think lots of people are going to have an immediate question that they want to answer. And so there might be duplication, and there's not going to be enough time. And some people will then feel they haven't got heard. So I don't know if
Yep.
Wait, so what are you proposing, Laura, in terms of when you would do what?
So you do the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
You say you give people some, a piece of paper and a pen, and be able to jot down questions that pop into their head as they come. Tell them there's going to be time. Then they basically go off into tables with their questions. They can discuss the questions, share. Oh, I had a similar question. Pull those questions, get some answers and thoughts amongst each other, so they consolidate those. And then because they're going to have someone there that can give some, discussion and answers, from a knowledge perspective. And then what's left from that, then come back as a group and then see, what questions as a group, or, what was the consensus in terms of items outstanding, next steps, points to be made.
So do a 15 to 20-minute presentation, then have all the interaction, not have the panel, have all the interaction, and then report back out so that the last maybe 20 minutes,
Right.
so
maybe
20 and 40, and then the rest of the time would be in the small groups at the tables.
Or what if
Yeah,
the
well, they just-
panel is at the end and the panel
Correct, the
can answer
panel's
the
at the end.
questions? Yeah, the
Exactly.
panel's at the
So
end. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So you
Mhm.
do the small groups
We
in
have
the
our
middle, and then
experts there.
That
and then
makes
the
sense.
panel.
Yeah, sure. Mhm.
Yeah. So the
So
panel
I
comes
think-
at the
Talking
end.
sooner. Mhm.
I think kind of what Laura is saying, and what's really important, and what I was sort of trying to say earlier, is that, when you're doing rote memory, like you're just sitting there listening to the lecture,
Mhm.
and then you need to get up and move, or you want to ask questions, you need to get involved, you need to break it up,
Mhm.
attention span. So,
Mhm.
having the presentation, which I think should be 20 to 30 minutes, and then having a breakout into small groups, whatever the task is that's related. That's
Mhm.
why I had those two things that related to But that can also be broken up within that presentation, that there's portion of presentation, turn and talk for the subdividing tasks in small groups, come back, second part of the presentation, turn and talk, do the small groups, come back, then potential, when you're coming back, you have the panel discussion and questions that were potentially, you could have answered them in your groups,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so when you come back at the end, then there's the panel, and that's when they have a little bit of a discussion about how they dealt with those two things and what they thought about those two tasks. And then the community, meanwhile, is handing in cards and they're setting them up to, and the cards have those questions from the community,
Mhm.
and they're being asked by one of us on the side, asking the panel. The panel is answering those questions as best they can.
Right.
I also believe Nan, the thing about all this is that Nan is, she is the professional, she's the consultant, she was the actual writer, she's the person we hired. She's so knowledgeable, and it showed in multiple times last
Yeah.
night.
Mm-hmm.
There were random questions or something that got a little lost, and I'm not saying the Housing Oversight Task Force has a very great command of all this information, but she has it in a way that she knew right away to jump into an example.
Mm-hmm.
She has that teacher quality that she knows it so well. She knows how to break it down, when to get into comprehension strategies, such as giving an example, showing the right slide.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
she's great.
really believe that she should be a part of the panel, that she should be a part of that explaining it, and she could probably get it down to shorter times.
Think you
We
should
can
send her
always
this letter.
intro and exit, but we, sort of help on the side and maybe a part of the groups, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth finding money to hire her to come and help us. And then I think Kai is a great idea as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's also at that county level. Dennis Doyle goes on and on. So Kai, I think, is a little more
Yeah.
brief.
Yeah.
I think Kai is more engaged in Woodstock in particular too,
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
yeah.
I-
So
Why don't we
Howard-
send Nan this letter that we got from this?
she saw it, I think, because it came in initially, or the content, I think, came into the Housing Oversight Task Force as a comment.
Mm.
So it's in their official comments. So I think she's seen it. But I think, once we get a sense, work this out, it would be great if she would come. I agree. She's a great presenter, and she's clear, and she has good examples and doesn't run on. So, she's really good. So
Mm.
And
can I just ask a question?
sorry.
If the tables are led by the folks who are going to be, if the people who are going to be on the panel are at the tables, then when they come back, it would probably be good for them to briefly share the questions that they got at the tables to some degree, because some tables may not have had those questions answered or even asked, but they might be of interest to everybody. So maybe there's some opportunity for them to say that the sense of their table, which is not an uncommon thing to do with a table share.
One thing that you could do that might work well, and sort of, as a visual memoir, is just to give each table a flip chart or a big piece of paper, and then someone scribes the questions, and then we just have a way of pinning them all up, and so and then people can see the commonality amongst the questions as well.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that the panel answers.
Well,
But one representative stands up from each group and reads off those questions to the panel.
Well, I'm not sure, but the idea is that every table won't have covered the same stuff, and you want a sense of what happened at each table.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can have somebody report out from each table, basically what happened at the table, where, hey, we were all real excited, or nobody wants to build anything at my table. They didn't want to build anything, but whatever it is, that's the report out from the table. And we had a couple of questions. The most interesting conversation we had was about this question, and we had a couple of outstanding questions. And then that goes to the panel to just kind of
Exactly.
respond to, which would be great.
I feel like there's an assumption that I think you guys are making, that people will watch the previous presentation, that they're going to know enough, or that they're going to be able to absorb a 15-20 minute presentation and turn around and then start creating. And I really think that we're being naive about that. I think that this is a lot of information. It's really comprehensive. It's new, it's got terminology, it's not super sexy. So I think that if you're trying, I don't think that you can't not, we have to somewhat teach, because there's too many people that were not at that event last night or watched.
Mhm.
They're not going to necessarily, just because we say, hey, watch the 2-hour show before coming to this meeting, that they're going to do that. If you don't think they're going to come to a 3-hour meeting, why do you think they're going to watch a 2-hour meeting and then come to the 2-hour meeting? Like, I just don't think that's realistic.
Well, if we could just get it down let's work on getting it down as much as we can, because we don't want them sitting there for 30 minutes either.
I mean, when
don't
we
think
say,
it's necessary.
can I ask a question? Who does everyone anticipate is going to make up the bulk of the audience?
Who knows?
It could range from contractors to people from other communities curious, to all the players, to environmentalists that don't really know much about housing, new people, old people.
Yeah, and
It's-
people who are looking for housing, that's what I've observed. Some of the-
Academics, or real, like, simple, they don't read very much, but it's not that they're not intelligent, they're just not readers, they're not academics, this is not something they're.
I mean that's a big range, and I mean I think some of those
differentiating
groups,
teaching. Yeah.
sure, but some of those groups are going to probably be small numbers. I mean, like I started to, gently spread the word, sound people out about, in the very sort of gentlest way, just that there's a new code out and it's very exciting, and there's a real, emphasis and recognition of the need to, increase affordable housing. And the first question that people typically ask is, well, where's it going to be? Where's this affordable housing going?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a very, so I think at this stage, maybe it's those very fundamental questions that have got to come first, rather than, and I mean, I don't know if there is a way to layer the information, but I hear what you're saying, Irina, that it is all important and it's complex and detailed, but it's like, what, back to what Howard said, what do we want our takeaways to be? What are the goals? What are the key thing that we want to get people doing? That's feeling excited and positive.
I just don't think I think our goals of having everything all in this one meeting, I think, is crazy.
Yeah.
It's too much. We've been doing this for 4 years. Some of us have been doing it for less. I taught myself by reading zoning in 3 acts. That's how I started, and then continued during COVID, because I had the time, like, this is not.
The people
easy.
don't have to be zoning experts. They don't have to
That's
know
not what
what
I'm
we
saying,
know.
but it is trying to teach all this information and 300 pages and get them understanding that, to then get excited. And like, I think that if we can just be realistic in our goals here, that we need to, as much as we can, do what they did last night with a little bit more interactive time for comprehension purposes, and hopefully get a little extra out of that at the end. But if people go away and they still don't understand, anybody else who speaks to them in the language being, whether it's layman's terms or whatever that they want to hear, or that is comprehensible to them, even if it's misinformation, they will believe it. So I think it's important that we accurately sort of teach this. And I think we can take last night's slides and how they had it all set up. They did a lot of that work for us. We don't have to redo it.
But
And
I
just
think a
break
lot
down
of those
those
slides were
pieces.
too technical, and that most people don't need to understand those technicalities. Like
I
about,
agree. Yeah.
net acreage, or, all those things that like are calculated. I'm not sure that's that important.
I
Like,
think it is, because if you have people there that are contractors or they own land and want to know what's going to happen to land, like Doug kept asking questions all night long.
Mm.
But-
John was there, came and asked questions about the affordability and wanted to know, but I got a phone call from somebody who was asking about, that was a prelude to this letter, that was asking a bunch of these similar questions and did not understand the whole money, the affordability, the 80 to 120% business.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of information that is technical that they need to understand in layman's terms,
right.
which we
But
need
we need
to.
to pick out those key things, though. I think, like, we
Yeah.
don't have to cover everything. I do agree that affordability, the definition
Absolutely.
of that is very important.
yeah. It
And
always
all the
has been.
environmental
Right.
things, positive things about the code for
You
the
know what?
environment is very important.
If we could focus on what we think, I mean, this is our goal, is to bring affordable housing to the town. So what are the things that excite us about the code? What are the things that, when we look at that presentation, what are the things that we think, we hope people could get excited about, that are big differences, that are big changes, that are opportunities for the town? What are those things? The builders and the people who want to do something on their land, they need a little more detailed work. They're not the people that didn't watch or wouldn't watch a presentation from last night. They're the people that need more information, not less. And it seems to me, if we are able to do something in this night that really engages people and doesn't, overwhelm them with information, but engages them, that at the end of the night, if people are excited and want to know more, we can schedule another event. But in my experience, this is not a town that likes to show up for series. Everything I've done that's ever been a series is had different people at it each event. So I just think we have an opportunity here to dumb this down, to be focused on the things that we think are really important to us.
Yeah, I,
And this interaction is great. I think, I think it'll be really exciting. Howard?
I think one way to dumb this down is if we express what it is we're trying to encourage in Woodstock, affordable housing, and the various types that comes in, and then state that, well, somebody who doesn't know what the issues are would say, well, why can't you do it? So maybe the next step is, we'd like to encourage affordable housing to be built in Woodstock, and these are the things that are preventing that. And this is why we need to have the zoning changes. So, and maybe that's the way they'll understand how the zoning affects why we can't build affordable housing in Woodstock, by telling them that, well, here's the reason why we can't, because the density situation, the 5-acre zoning, etc. And then say, here's how we're responding by these changes to make affordable housing able to be built in Woodstock. And
Mhm.
then the next step is, well, what's preventing, these big time, big money developers from coming in and using the same zoning changes to build other things?
Mhm.
Maybe that's the way we can couch it, so people will understand why can't we build affordable housing in Woodstock, and this is how we affect that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the piece that I think Nan did toward the end of the meeting last night, when she talked about, and I think Deborah added some, the difference between the current PRD, the planned residential development, and the floating residential district and its requirements, I think is a perfect case of what you're talking about, Howard. This, hey, what we can build now is that a developer can come in and do whatever they want. And then, under the between the floating residential district and the conservation development restrictions, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
That somehow to be able to present these things in a more kind of practical
Mhm.
fashion, as opposed to this is the zoning code.
Yeah.
What
How about, I mean, another way, just building on what Howard said, we look at examples. Is it possible to start off with 2 or 3 situations where, that are proper examples, real examples of people or groups or whoever that have tried to or wanted to create affordable housing, and the reasons that they couldn't, and then looking under the current code and then saying that this, these changes to the code would now mean that this could happen and this could happen, but actually this particular example, say where it was a developer wanting to jump on the bandwagon or whatever, they wouldn't be able, these are the measures in the code that would actually prevent that or differentiate between this type of application and that type of application. So something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's good. The problem is that we're talking about weeds, and I don't know what you've been doing the last year or so, but every time I talk to somebody who is very concerned about how to get affordable housing and what we are doing, and if you try to give them a quick summary synopsis and their follow-up questions, you give them a little bit of the weeds, they still don't get it. What was nice about last night is it had a overview, hit the big stuff, and then went a little bit into weeds. The only thing that I think that is sort of those 3 sections is slide 6 with the subdivision, where it had a compare and contrast conventional versus conservation development that's happening now, and how is that covers really the important environmental aspects and smart growth, which Kai could talk to a lot about. And then slide 8, well, there's slide 7 in between, policy outcome, blah, blah, blah. Then there's slide 8 where it got into ADUs. These are the areas where we also had a lot of questions and confusion, and they're also very exciting, I think. And that had a compare and contrast. And that's where it talked about deeding and stuff. And so these are that's where it gets into affordable. But when you show them the bigger picture and then kind of zone in to a little bit of weeds and then move on, then they kind of get what's going on, get the little piece, move on to the next. And then slide 9 talks a little bit about density, middle housing, and then slide 10 and the different kinds, duplex, triplex. Slide 10 gets into the PRD district, the new floating, which has a compare and contrast. But that's a little scary to get into, because that's where people go, and that's we should, I think, mention that and then immediately jump into the town has, some land, or maybe the Woodstock Housing Alliance has some land, or someone donates, and then that's when this comes into play. But it's not something you're going to see happen all the time. Because it's 40, it's like for 40 or over units.
Right.
40 to 80, I think it is units. I don't think it's, you can't go past, it's a certain amount,
Yeah.
which
So-
also addresses a lot of these issues that are in this letter.
Yeah, absolutely. So an overview for sure, of the purpose without going through the whole comprehensive plan, without going through, you know, we can, you could talk about this stuff in a very broad way and say, this is why the zoning code revisions are important. And then I think it would be really good to focus on the pieces that we think are the most meaningful. And those basically, the conservation subdivision, the ADUs, the different styles of multifamily housing, and the idea of the floating zone. I mean, those four things are huge in terms of being changes and having a lot of the important questions within them. And
Right.
that would be fine.
But I think that that's what I'm trying to say is that I think that we could reduce the presentation slides. Some of them can combine,
Mhm.
like slide 9 and slide 12 can combine.
We're not looking at them, so it's hard to,
Slide 12 was housing types expanded, cluster cottages, tiny homes, continuing care, elderly co-housing.
mhm.
That goes with slide 9, which was density allowing 3 and 4 unit structures, duplexes, triplexes, quads, stuff like that. That could be pulled together and talk, about the missing middle, which is just the reason why. And redirecting people, you want to know more information, you can go to the library, this book, whatever, you can have the book there. But some of that stuff could be reduced in that way. A shorter version of how this all started. We don't have to go into the long,
Yeah, right.
that bit, whatever.
Mm-mm.
Formation, discovery, analysis, but I think that should be kind of mentioned about sort of how this started and how, and my big note there was, there should have been a quote, very specific, based on the research that the housing committee did. Based on the research, this is what other places solutions.
Mhm.
And therefore, that's why we're here today. It was a example of solutions in cities and states and towns across the nation. Pattern for Progress think tank, like that, remember? That's how it sort of started for us. Zoning revisions.
Right.
But also
mean,
that they're connected.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, well, geez, slide 9 and 12, all the different styles of housing. We could begin with that, put those up there. These are all the kinds of housing that in our research in the housing committee, we've gotten excited about. How do we bring these to our town? And then, talk about the importance of changing our zoning so that we can encourage these things. It doesn't have to be a long, detailed introduction.
Hmm.
So if we can look at the slides and see which ones we think, and then, think about what would be a really engaging presentation that we can ask them. I don't know who should do this, is the other part, whether we can get Nan to do it, that'd be great.
I think that if she could get her to do it, she could reduce it.
Yeah,
She would even know which ones to reduce, what.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
everyone's gotta maybe take another look at that, rewatch it, take some notes.
Yeah.
With the mind of how to reduce it, what slides could be put together, what information was really important and what could be dropped. So as soon as that goes online, I don't know if that's on there now, I can't, no
We're
control.
also getting the presentation, so we can
Yeah,
just. look at the
Deborah's
presentation.
gonna
So,
Yeah.
I think that can be our, and within that, we plug in our panel discussion, turn and talk tabling.
I don't know what
and
that
maybe
turn and
people.
talk tabling is.
So turning and talk, so when you have teacher talking time is too high, which is your speaker, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
Talking. That's rote memory learning. That's the style or pedagogy is of someone standing there and lecturing to you.
Got it.
Right? Not fun. Certain amount of it, attention span of a gnat in our society now, you have to break that up. The
Mhm.
older you are, the more you can handle it. The younger you are, the less you can handle it. And if you have hearing problems, the less you can handle it. So, or attention spans or whatever. So, so what you do is instead you turn and talk. So you
I see.
ask a question and then everyone say, okay, for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I want everybody to turn and talk to someone to the right or left, or if you're already in the group, so if everybody's already sitting at tables, then
Mhm.
they turn to their table and talk. And
Mm.
at that point, you give them a certain amount of time to, or this is a rapid response. So you're
Uh-huh.
gonna turn and talk and rapidly say a couple things, go around each person, just a sentence or two. You really have to be direct about the direction. And then they
Mhm.
do that. And then they come back and, oh, interesting. I didn't think of it that way.
Mhm.
So that also tells you learn from your peers,
Right.
what they heard, what you heard.
Okay.
Sometimes they answer each other's questions right there.
Mm.
Or
So,
they bring up another question and then it comes
Mm.
back to the main group, but it gives them a break, literally a break.
yeah.
It
No,
helps with comprehension.
I'm not sure that we could effectively
Right.
do in this kind of a thing, multiples of that,
Mhm.
because once you get people in a room like that, even if they're at small tables starting to talk, getting them to stop is
Mhm.
very difficult. And this content is also very related. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure how, if we haven't talked about affordability yet, then why would we have them break to, after we did a talking about conservation subdivisions,
So here's the
that
example. I
kind
had
of
this
thing.
whole conversation last night with Deborah and Jeff and anyway, so you take slide 6, which talks about the policy outcome subdivision code of chapter 202. You take that same slide. My only fixing of that slide was to put keep the 2 boxes with the visuals, put literally a line down the middle. It's called a T chart. It's a graphic organizer. And you put a T chart kind of in between and underneath the photos. And then there's got to be a more better title to differentiate the differences, a name or title of some sort of which side is what.
Right.
So when last night, as an example, why I say that is because Bill had to explain
Right.
that he was saying, well, that's the conventional development. So did Laura jumped in to say, well, this is how it's always been,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So the left side is conventional, how it is today, how it's been since the 80s,
Right.
right? And now that this is being updated, which is also important to say, now that this idea of updating it on the
Mhm.
right side of the T chart, and then underneath it has the listed bulleted points. So in comparing and contrasting, that's what it is, like Venn diagrams, those are
Right. I get it. I got
graphic.
it. I got it.
So at that
Let's-
point, when you talk about that part, so you do your all the way up to there is
Mhm.
the presentation, which might be 10 minutes or so. And we get to that part. And then you go, okay, next slide, which might be added or something like that, is you turn and you show an example. And
Mhm.
you say, okay, here's an example, left side, what it would look like today, right
Mhm.
side, what we're,
Mhm.
or just doing the example. We're gonna take 30 acres. We're gonna take 5, it's an R5 or an R3.
Okay, we don't, I just want the idea.
I am. Can you just let me finish? This is my way of talking.
Okay, but it's
So
getting late.
then you have that. Never mind. I give up. Okay, never mind.
I think
We're good.
we could decide if that's gonna work
yeah.
once we pick
I
out our
just-
slides.
Okay, great. Okay, got it.
And also, I wouldn't mind spending some time about how we're gonna spread the word about this event.
Mhm.
Because I would like to enlist Howard and Laura's help so that Urena and Susan and I aren't doing everything like putting up notices on bulletin boards and things like that. So if we are going to do that, like we should talk about those details.
How do we spread the word?
Well, so first of all, social media, which Lorraine is really good at.
Yeah, I don't,
And then the newsletter, which Susan, Urana, and I do together. We should get it into the newspaper.
Letters to the editor.
Letters to the editor, yep.
Oh,
I was gonna reach out to radio stations because I have a neighbor who only listens to the radio, so she always wants to know why she doesn't hear about things that we're doing on the radio. So I was gonna see if I could get some kind of public service announcement going.
I mean, if we got any printed, like, you know, we got any flyers, or, I mean, I'm happy to go and post those around wherever.
Yeah, so we have to make those, that's the thing.
Right.
Somebody's got to make all this stuff, and then we've got to get it out there, so. We have to get the copy together. We could make, it doesn't have to be overly designed, I don't think.
I mean, we have the announcement that Urana put together for the newsletter. Just it's,
Yeah, we have to make it more like a poster though, right? Like
right. It would have to be
Yeah, repurposed.
rejiggered.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we could, yeah, somebody could put that in, I guess, maybe in store windows, but I don't know. I think we just have to hit everything. But I think that, be great if we get the newsletters out and the letters to the editor, and maybe a mention on the radio, getting the calendars, all the
just an interesting point. I happened to mention to a colleague in real estate in my office that I was off to. She said, "Oh, you on the?" She wanted to know if I was on the street sign committee. She seemed to think that I said no, and because that's obviously a big point of discussion in town at the minute as well. And then we went on to talk about the library. She said, "Are you going on Saturday?" And I said yes. And she said, "Oh, someone came by and asked if we could put a sign, publicizing the event at the library." And she said, "Oh, but I was a bit worried because it's so contentious, the library, and we don't want to, when it becomes so political." And it's just like really interesting that even that, and I just, it was something that people are just, slightly reticent to do. So
yeah.
Just
well, I will, I'll check with, the library is having an affair this Saturday. And I'll have to ask them, how did they spread the word? I wasn't involved in the actual advertising of it, but I'll find out what how they spread the word. Maybe,
Well, they have it in their newsletter, and then I get their mailings, and
so do I.
got a really nice mailing, but they have money and you don't have any money. So,
And through social media, they've done.
Yeah, and social media. Yeah.
Well, I think, we just have to get the word out, and hopefully people, if we have an email announcement, then we can each send it to our lists, and hopefully between that and social media, generally people, if you get 70 or 100 people at a meeting, that's a lot. So, that would be great. That would be great.
all right, well, I'll do some research tomorrow and find out places to spread the word.
Yeah, let's look at the timeline for this.
Exactly.
If you go to a store, see if they have a bulletin board.
Right.
So if we're doing this on the
Post
30th,
offices have
Post
bulletin.
office-
Post offices definitely do, so,
that's a good one.
yeah.
And the farmers market opens on the 17th, so there'll be a couple of weeks of that. You can do a little, I think there's a community info table there that we could maybe definitely put some flyers at.
There's also in the saving in one second, I'm absolutely gone today. I've had such a long day. In the banks, they have, behind, they have the places that if you go in and it's for the community, they'll put them in there, so we could do that.
Right.
A Hannaford supermarket also has a community.
do.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
page.
Yeah, they do. And I think
Sunflower does. too.
Sunflower does too, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So the 30th is a Tuesday. So that means we have to be in the paper the week before,
Right.
which the letters to the editor deadline is, I think, Monday, the 22nd. So that week, we have to have stuff out. And this is the 10th. So that means everything we're going to do, we need to be preparing
Hmm.
this week and next.
Next week.
So that's our time frame. We've got
Mhm.
about 10 days, working days, before we really need to have everything done and ready to get out there.
Uh, who can produce the flyer that we need, the poster? Are we gonna take something that's existing and just modify it to say what we want?
Yeah, I mean, I could try to design it. I'm not
Right.
a designer, but I'm passable, maybe. I don't know. I just want, it has to fit like on an 8.5 by 12 or,
8.5 by 11, yeah, just a
yeah,
regular
8.5 by
piece of
11.
paper.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Not too much copy, because it's gotta be readable, catch your eye
Right.
when you walk by
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah.
And it would be good to focus on creating the housing we need, that
Right.
get people that way. Come learn about how we can create the housing we need,
Yeah.
as opposed to come learn about the new zoning law.
Right. That's good.
Right, well, I think there's plenty of examples of
Yeah.
all kinds of housing that we probably already have.
Yeah,
I looked at a lot of them. I
yeah.
think a lot of them are applicable.
I'll work on a letter to the editor.
Okay.
And then what are we gonna do with these, looking at these, the PowerPoint slides? When are we supposed to be getting those, and how can we look at, sort of,
Deborah's away till Friday, so I have a feeling we're not going to get it before the weekend. So we'll have to work on it next.
right? I mean, okay, it's,
But you
Does
can
any-
look at the presentation
Yeah.
and, and see what went on, and you can fast forward through it, you don't have to
Mhm.
hear everything if you don't want to, but you can certainly see the slides and
sure.
get familiar with what's there.
Yeah,
And
no, of course.
if everybody just can let's get multiple senses of how we think that presentation ought to go, and we need to ask if Nan could do it.
Yeah. Then what about handouts? Are we planning to have handouts? Are we going to do the zoning terms or?
Well, I mean, they think the glossary is a good idea, and people can, have that and be able to take it away, I think it's a great effort. We need to work on getting
Somebody try
them.
to finish it up, right? And
Yeah,
we have to, I'd like to get everything copied before Memorial Day weekend, because I don't want to be doing that on Memorial Day weekend.
right.
So,
Yeah, if we can get the definition, the glossary terms, I thought maybe if we could get them organized in clusters that make sense in terms of content, that would be helpful. And then whittle them down so they're a little more they're short, but also, say what they need to say.
and we've got the FAQs, which I think are worth handing out again.
Yep.
And we're going to make a separate document for the glossary of who works on housing in Woodstock.
Oh, right. The
So-
different organizations.
Yeah,
that one.
because Jeff and Deborah requested that.
Right.
So. that's
So
probably enough, right?
how are we going to work on the glossary? Who's
Is that, we get that from zoning ordinances in,
well, that's we've started the document.
Yeah.
Urena made a document and put it
I
together.
I
saw
put
that.
together the
Laura-
terms. Yeah,
Laura did a bunch, and but they don't conform in any way, and I think they would benefit from being in categories that make sense for them. These are
Usually in
terms that
alphabetical order.
I was thinking more in terms of, these are terms that relate to changes in to protections of the environment. These are terms that relate to the size of buildings, whatever, those kinds of things, so that they're broken down. They're not just a long list of terms. They're broken up into some sort of sense. That was my thought, because I look at pages of text and I just am not interested.
Yeah.
And if I know I'm looking for something, alphabetical order helps. But if I don't know what I'm looking for, and I've got one up here that relates to building and one down there, they're not together in a way that I can look at them and make some sense out of them.
Can I ask, are the terms going to be defined in any way within the presentation or not? Just wondering.
Well, I guess, the major ones like conservation subdivision, that
Right.
kind of thing. Hopefully affordability, we can make something really, really solid there.
I was just sort of thinking, maybe we just, for the purposes of this, I don't know, do we just is the handout just reaffirming or, talking or including the things that have been mentioned in the discussion rather than a long list?
Mhm.
I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I think, let's use that list in a way that makes sense
Yeah,
for people.
it's just like there's so much to do with so little time.
That's true. That's true.
Crazy.
It's well, we can only do what we can do. So, we've got to get together newsprint, and we have to get supplies and all that stuff too.
I know. Well, I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So if each of us can work on what we think is key in the presentation, then we can come
Okay.
together and see how much we agree. And where the differences are.
Okay.
And
We're
that's,
going to do this.
that would be
Are we going to
huge.
do this with a sort of thinking around the fact we're looking at 15 to 20 minutes? Yeah, because that's the key thing, isn't it? To help us to be, to decide what we think we should include or is important. So we're going to go for.
If we shoot for 20 minutes, it'll probably take 30,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So, and it shouldn't be any more than 30.
Okay.
I don't think, you don't want people, I agree, you don't want people.
No,
sitting
you
there at
definitely
all.
don't.
You don't want
No.
people sitting there, and breaking them up, I'm afraid, is going to just use time without helping them.
Where do we get the images from the, that were presented last night? Where do we get those from?
I think they'll be in the PowerPoint, but actually I found most of those last year when I was working on version 1. So I have them in a folder somewhere. So I can find those again, or maybe Deborah has them handy.
Well, so we'll get them, we think, by the weekend from Deborah, but if you want to see them otherwise, I think you might have to go to the town board recording.
Well, Howard was there last night, right?
Yeah.
No, I was on Zoom.
Yeah.
I should have been in person. It was really hard to follow it and listen to it. The sound wasn't great, and
Mm.
I had a hard time really getting. I wish I was there in person. I should have gone in person. I think it would have been better.
Well, so that's where the slides are, and as soon as we get them, Catherine will make sure everybody knows how to
Yeah.
access them.
Okay.
Okay.
So we need a date to have done that work. So let's say, assuming we have access sometime through the weekend, can we give ourselves till next week to go through that and come up? I guess, I don't know if there's any way to do this other than to get together and share our ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, what would you like me to do? Rather than us all doing the same thing, I'm happy
Right.
to take a task and go for it.
Mm.
Um, well,
You could just put the notices up on the bulletin boards if you want, Howard.
Yeah,
I'll
if I
try-
had the, yeah, as soon as I get the notices, I'm happy
Yeah,
to,
I'll work on that next week.
okay.
And do you know how to put announcements in the newspaper? I've only done it with HV1, but I can do that again. That's pretty easy, actually.
calendars.
I haven't done it with the daily, but what's it called, the Freeman?
The HV1 Almanac, the
Yeah.
WDST has an online calendar,
Okay,
WAMC has an online calendar, KZE has an online calendar,
Hmm.
and there are usually forms on the website that you fill out, and you can do that. That'd be great. I don't know who looks at those, but you know, at least they're there.
I'll call Hannaford to find out how we can get, what the
Okay.
process is for getting them to advertise our event.
So which
Some-
of us are going to look at slides and make some suggestions about the presentation, about what we think? Laura,
Yeah,
Urana,
Raina left.
she left.
Yeah, she sent us an email.
She sends an email,
She
which
sent
says,
an email saying that she left, she had to go back to work.
oh, okay. Okay, so I guess,
Happy to look, but
Yeah.
we don't need too many cooks, right?
well, I think a few different perspectives, you know, we learned, we changed a lot in this meeting just from different
Sure.
perspectives showing up, I think.
Right.
So, you know, I'll look at it too. And let's
We'll have
get,
to
you
meet
know,
next week sometime, right?
yeah, should we meet next Wednesday? We do that?
Yeah, we can do
Um,
that. I get the town Zoom, but I can do my Zoom, or we could meet in person. I'm coming up to Woodstock tomorrow for the rest of the summer most, so.
oh, welcome, great.
Finally.
We'd have to have a place to meet and the town probably has,
Yeah.
well, will you work on that, Kath, and see how if we can use the town Zoom or,
Yeah, or we can use my Zoom.
okay,
It doesn't have to be a
all right,
town.
yeah, if we're all meeting again, then it's, you know, it's
Well, it's just three of
meetings
us.
law.
Yeah,
Oh, if it's just the three of us,
'cause Uranus not gonna wanna meet again.
probably
Well,
not.
yeah.
Okay. Then, so 5 o'clock again on the 17th?
Sure.
okay.
And we will, on the presentation, and any further thoughts you have on the setup of it, because we need to be solid about what the agenda is actually going to be.
Right.
This is pretty general here, so
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I wonder if we can skip the scribe on the large paper part, because somebody's gonna have to go get the large paper somewhere. I feel like that's gonna be me, but,
no, the town may have,
oh, you
or
think so? Okay, good.
yeah, or maybe, yeah, I can,
Easels
I'll
and,
check around, maybe the library has some. You don't need too many pages. I have one that from the housing committee, I have one.
Okay.
And if we could just have backing for it, we could pull pages out of it.
Okay.
But let's,
If there's tables, you can just give each table 2 sheets and a pen, and then as long as we got
That's
some
true.
pins.
yeah,
somewhere-
you need someplace to, you could hang it on the wall, I guess.
Yeah,
Something
exactly.
taped to the
Hang it on
wall.
the wall afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, I think we probably have enough.
Okay.
Um, So we need to think about how many tables do we really need, and how many facilitators will we have? People that know what they're talking about, how many people from the HOTF will be available.
Right.
So yeah, those kinds of details.
Who's going to be inviting now?
Well, we'll have to be talking to them, I guess. Catherine and I will both probably talk to Deborah after she gets back, and then she'll have to be in touch with them about our ideas, what we'd like to do, and also inviting Nan.
Yeah.
So those are the two, that's the main stuff from there.
This is in our shared drive, is it, the event outline?
This is, it can be in the shared drive. I'll put it there. I don't know what the categories, but I will put it there under outreach, whatever the current outreach folder is.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. I guess
Bye.
we can keep on emailing each other as we progress.
Yeah, if anything, questions or thoughts come up, please just share.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
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 Bye for now.